One of the most powerful but often overlooked tools that we have for problem identification and also measuring outcomes is holding a focus group. And I'm not talking about a bunch of people hanging around talking about marketing or, did I like one brand of soda or another. I'm talking about bringing together people that do the job and asking them some serious questions about what's going on to help you get the voice of the customer and understand what really needs to be fixed. I'll give you an example of this. I was working in nursing orientation. And in nursing orientation, you want to be looking at the manager, the orientee, the preceptor, and the educator for orientation. We did separate focus groups for each of these. And what we found was amazing. From the managers, they said, I don't know what's in orientation. I've never been asked. From the preceptors, they said, well, I don't worry about what's in the class. I just kind of do my own thing. We also found a lot of different interesting discussions about when is somebody able to come off orientation and what's going on. From the orientees, they were very clear. They said, look, most of the stuff I just had in orientation, I learned in nursing school. From the educators, now this is one of my favorite. Started talking about kind of why do they do what they do in the courses. And one of them said it this way. I said, well, why do you do such and such in a course? And they said, well, 10 years ago we did it this way. I said, okay. Well, why did you do it that way 10 years ago? And I'll quote, she said, well, in 1978. Well, in 1978, that's almost 40 years ago. A lot of things have changed since then. Well, we wouldn't have known that unless we were in the focus groups and diving in and found out what it was a legacy. There was an event in the hospital in 1978 that there were then things that happened in orientation that were still there 30 some odd, almost 40 years later. So in the focus groups, you want to dive in deep and you've got to create a safe environment to do that. All the rules, just like simulation, should apply. Vegas rule, what happens here stays here. So you shouldn't be taking names, shouldn't be taking a list. What I will do is tell people I will take notes. So I usually like to do that on a board so they can see which notes I'm taking, or ask them to do it on Post-it notes, and we'll come back to that in a second. But those notes don't have names. It is sometimes useful to say, well, 5 out of 7 people said this, so numbers might help, but it should not be something where people can figure out the names. So Vegas rule, what happens here stays here. And that is really important because the first time you break that in a focus group, you're going to be out of luck. And when you report the data from a focus group, don't be surprised if somebody asks, well, who said that? You have to be comfortable saying, I can't tell you. The other thing you have to do is make sure you have groups of learners together that are all of a similar level or approach. If you have the manager and the orientee in the same room, you probably are not going to get honest answers from either or. You want to make sure you have mixed groups of peers that feel comfortable. Now, the difficult thing is you may not be able to do your own focus groups because you as a leader might have an impact on it. Depends. You might have to try it out. Depends on also the issue you're trying to address. When you get into the focus groups, I really try to focus around 3 questions. What works? What doesn't? Or what works? What could be even better yet? And the last question is, if you were CEO or CNO or dean or whoever is in charge, what would you do? What that does, it helps people look at the positives, what could improve, but it also holds them accountable to figure out solutions. Now, having done quite a few focus groups, the solutions for if you're CEO are just amazing because sometimes the answers are so simple that we just overlook them. To get people to discuss, you can do either open or closed brainstorming. Sometimes open brainstorming, having people just talk about and you as the facilitator right up the board works, but sometimes you have people dominate or not speak. One of the alternates is to start off with closed brainstorming. Give everybody Post-it notes and have them, they can put a plus, minus, or delta sign, whatever it is, what works, what doesn't, or CEO, and have them write as many things as they can. Now what you can do is start, as a facilitator, grabbing those and start sorting those. And what happens is then you can get the group to start doing a sort so they can look and see commonalities. And what will happen often is they often have ideas that they can add in. And then as we start diving in, we can have discussions behind, well, why is this a big topic? Why do we have 6 Post-it notes on this one? Or whatever it may be. Now that being said, some people who are very cautious may worry about their handwriting. You'll have to explain that you're going to transcribe it and not provide the actual content. When you complete a focus group, it's important to circle back both with those who are in the focus group and those who are receiving the data. I often like to give them the same report and have them see the response. When you are with the decision makers, you have to be strong when they ask, Who said what? When you are with the decision makers, realize they're going to say, well, what's the context? And the answer is, this is what half a dozen, 10, 12, whatever is in your focus group said. You need to be careful not to put your opinion in there. I know I've had difficulty with that. It's challenging at times. But you need to just present the data as is. When you have the data, the other thing you can do is you can start sorting within the what works, what doesn't, and in CEO into the learner, their experience, and their environment. That way you can actually start adding that into your problem identification. Now, if you're using a focus group for outcomes, sometimes what will happen is it'll allow you to get those next tweaks. Hopefully you see a lot more things shift into the positive, but you may see some other great ideas about what they would do with CEO. My favorite example of using this for outcomes, I was talking to preceptors about an orientation program. I said, well, how did the orientation program impact the students? They said, well, it didn't. I said, okay. I said, but HR started hiring much better nurses. I said, well, that's okay. It doesn't matter where the credit goes. It's just a matter of they're seeing the change. Focus groups are a tool that you should keep in your tool belt for both the problem identification and outcomes approach, and don't be afraid to use it throughout. Don't be afraid to use all your debriefing skills within the focus groups, and don't be afraid to practice.